Welcome to All In with Allie podcast, the podcast for online entrepreneurs and business owners who are ready to create the life and business of their dreams. I'm sitting here with such a fabulous, brilliant, smart, funny, freaking funny woman, Dr. Wendy. It's Dr. Wendy, by the way. Okay, one of my favorite things that you ever said to me, I just remind myself of this. We were talking, this is back like when you and I first got in each other's world. And you said to me, you know what? I'm really damn funny. I feel like not enough people, I can't remember exactly what you said. Like not enough people give me credit about that, but I'm like really damn funny. And I was like, amazing. Show me. I want to laugh. Show me you're funny. And you really are. You are freaking hilarious. And I have missed you. How have you been?
Good. Everything's been really good. Like the transition from winter to spring was so needed. I was so ready for light and for it to be lighter later. Like the winter just, as I get older, and I hate to start sentences that way, but now it's 43. I'm affected by things differently than I used to be. So the winters have a different vibe. And I have started having to figure out how to survive into thrive in a winter season. It's tricky.
It is so tricky. I appreciate you saying that, by the way, because same. I've been very open about this past winter, particularly for me, but also drama aside, same. Seasonal depression, this has never been something that I even knew about because I didn't need to know about it. Because I guess when you're young, I don't know. I don't know if this is I'm sure it's not obviously everybody's situation or experience. But for me, it's only been the past couple of years that when it's daylight savings and it's darker for longer and then it gets cold and nasty, so does my
That's
mood.
Right.
We go into a dark place and I'm just like, what the hell? Like Chris and I kid you not, we want to start spending our winters in Florida or something, like old people.
Completely. I went to the doctor a couple years ago and I was like, Doc, I'm cold all the time. And he's like, oh, yeah. You're getting older. Your skin's getting thinner. That was his reply.
Rude.
I couldn't believe it.
No, sir.
I was like, are you kidding me? But it was also around that time that I became familiar with hygge. Are you familiar with hygge? Okay.
No, what's hygge?
It's so fun. Hygge. It's like the Danish practice of embracing all things cozy. It essentially has been created to help us navigate tough seasons and weather and funky times of the year. And so hygge is all about embracing the things that make you feel nurtured and cozy. So I started to learn about this and I thought, oh my goodness, there's a great book. It's called The Little Book of Hygge. It's like this little cute book and it has all these great tips. So the idea behind it is that, especially for those of us that may have some harsh, dark winters, you can figure out these little strategies of how to tweak your experience of the season. So it's like, what candles do you light in the winter? And maybe you light them earlier than usual. When do you light your fire? And do you have that going more often? What types of recipes are you cooking? What types of cozy blankets do you have easily accessible? What types of activities? Are we doing more puzzles? Are we doing crosswords? Are we watching more movies? How can we embrace the season? Because what we know is that the more we reject what is, the more suffering that's created for us. So hygge is such a fun way to be like, you know what? Screw this. I'm going to flip the script. I can find ways to embrace the season better and not spend every day complaining that it's not different than it is. So it's really fun.
What a concept. What a concept. Yeah. Embracing versus resisting. And it's so true. I mean, we can talk about that in any way, shape, or form, especially in business, right? It's like, okay, listen, yes, can we travel? Can we switch it up a little bit? Can you make a drastic change? Which I don't know what that says about me. I'm sure we could totally psychoanalyze this, but I'm a big drastic change I'm just like, F this. I want to change it all. I want to burn it down. I want to flip it on its head. Let's sell everything and move. And it's like, okay, or, you can buy a couple candles, light your fire, put a pot roast in the oven, snuggle up with a movie, and alas, you're not as sad anymore.
Amazing.
You just saved a ton of money.
You just saved a ton of money and a ton of therapy for our children. Like, it's such a cool concept, and it's really simple. And I loved that. So I would start actually talking to my clients about, okay, if you're one of the women that feels this shift of the season, create this little like hygge basket next to your couch where you have like knitting needles or books you want to read, or a list of ideas about like audiobooks or podcasts you want to catch up on. Cook different recipes. Give yourself permission to like shut things down as early as you want to. Don't feel like you have to extend your energy throughout the entire day when it peters out by like 3:00. So yeah, so fun. So that's been really helpful for me, but I'm grateful for spring.
Okay. I'm so thankful that I asked you that. Okay.
Hygge.
Hygge. Hygge. I'm going to look that up, and I'll put something in the show notes for anybody who wants that book. And I love this idea for businesses too, because we build, those of us who create our own offers, like you're not a coach. I mean, you are in a sense, but like you're a positive psychologist who has offers around that. I mentor people. And a big reason of why we started these businesses is for freedom, right? So being able to go into a new season and say, okay, based on what I want this to look and feel like for me, what do my offers get to look and feel like? How do I want my schedule to be? Okay, it doesn't feel good when I'm working, when it starts to get dark outside. So how can I arrange things to where I can shut it down at 3 p.m., go get a workout or whatever, bundle up, go take the kids outside, whatever, go get some vitamin D. And I love that so much.
Or it's like one of the things I found once we create the time freedom that we so desire, was why we become entrepreneurs. Sometimes that time freedom can feel a little too free. So there's sometimes in the winter that sessions are over, done for the day. The kids aren't home from school yet. And you're kind of like, it's getting dark and you're like, what am I doing? So even scheduling creating a different schedule for yourself. I would change the times of my workouts to be later in the day, so I'm not getting up in the pitch black. You could shift your clients' schedule so that you're seeing them a little bit later in the day, so you're not feeling like, what am I doing with the rest of this darkness? So it's just kind of a fun way to see flexibility in your mindset around shifting your expectations, business-wise or personal.
I literally was on a mastermind call right before this with the mastermind that I'm in, and we were talking about this because we've all been feeling this collective, many of us anyway, this collective feeling of like wanting to shift some things in our containers and some things that we've had maybe one way for a few months or even some people a few years, but this fear of people being upset about the change and being like, well, I signed up for this specific structure, and how so many of us will hold back on making the shifts that's best for us and potentially even best for the people that are affected by it, but they don't know yet because we haven't made the shift out of fear that people aren't going to be okay. And this is another thing that we have to remind ourselves, like we are modeling what's possible for the people that are coming into our world. So if something is best for us and our well-being, but we won't shift it out of fear, what are we modeling to the people that are watching us?
It's easy.
That if you're upset, that if you're not well, that if you're, if you are resisting or feeling angsty about the containers that you're leading, you're not going to shift it because you're afraid people are going to leave you. What kind of leadership is that? That's not the kind of leadership that I want to be led by. So this is it's really powerful when you think
about it. It really is. And it's such an easy thing to forget because we forget that we even have that ability to step into that leadership role in that way. We think we just need to do the things that the clients are asking for so that they're not upset. But the reality is our clients just want results. They just want to feel better about whatever aspect of their life they're coming in to improve. And if they can trust your process, and if you can trust your process and show up the way that feels most authentic to you in that season, and you still get to create a container that leads to these incredible results for your clients, people get too caught up sometimes in the detail and don't trust enough the process along the way.
I agree. Yeah. Didn't you come in here to grow? Isn't that why you're here? And we forget that, right? And same for me. Like I came in here to grow alongside with you. So with growth, like something needs to change. And it's very, very easy to forget. So, okay. So good. Well, let's pause that, because I feel like this is all potent to the conversation. We're going to end up back here anyway. But first, before we get too deep into that, I want the people to hear about you and what it is that you do and how you got to where you are now. So you're a positive psychologist. Take us back as far back as you want to go. Before Dr. Wendy was Dr. Wendy. How did you get here?
So the first thought that comes to mind is I knew I wanted to be a psychologist in my first psychology class in 7th grade. So this teacher came in to teach us about psychology, and we had this class that she said, these are the different options you have with your career choices if you chose to become a psychologist. And when she described the private practice description of what that would look like if that was my chosen career, I was instantly a hell yes. I was like, that is me. I already do that for free with my friends. The fact that I could give advice and listen to people and like help them feel better and get paid, I was all in. All in.
Wait, so in 7th grade, you feel like you were already doing this in some way with your friends?
Yeah, think about it. You were too. You just didn't realize you can get paid for it.
I wasn't thinking about it like that.
My friends would come for me for advice. We talk about relationships and friends and drama and all the things, and I give advice. And I remember just thinking, I loved it. I loved being a trusted, safe space for somebody to open up and to feel like they could be themselves. And then I loved like having some ideas about what they could do differently to feel better. And it worked. And I was like, this is so fun. It was so rewarding for me. So then I just followed the path to becoming a psychologist. It really wasn't, which is strange, right? I do get that that's strange. It's unique, but I followed the path to become a psychologist. So I did my undergrad in psychology. I went to Stanford to get my doctorate in clinical psychology. I did my internship in California, my postdoc in California. And then I went off to fly, and I flew right into what I always wanted to do, which was have a private practice. So I became a private practice clinician. I did that for a number of years, loved it, thought it was the coolest thing ever, until it didn't feel so cool anymore. And that happened when I ended up having 3 daughters 15 months apart. So I had my first daughter, Ella, and then when she was 6 months old, we got pregnant with twins, and I had 3 girls under 2. And all of a sudden, everything shifted, obviously, from my energy to my drive, to my priorities, my values. And I started to find that it was so hard for me to have the energy for them and the energy for my patients. And then my husband, Todd, would be like, have you even like looked at me today? And I was like, I don't think so. I don't.
Who are you
think
again?
I have.
What are you doing here?
He was like at the end of the line. And I remember just thinking like, this is all backwards. This felt backwards to me, that I had to try to conserve so much energy for my clinical work that it was just leaving what was remaining for my family, my new family. That's like the thing I've wanted forever. And so I said to Todd, I think I'm ready to retire. And he was like, oh, are you sure? Yeah. This was a few years ago, 5 years ago. So I was in my like late 30s, and I was like, and he said to me, but you have like $200,000 in student loans. Like, do you think we should really retire? And I was like,
maybe, we've
kind of a good point. I think you have some say in this. So I went to this place of, okay, I love what I do, but something needs to shift. It's not feeling right anymore. And so I did a lot of extensive journaling. I just looked inward. Who am I? What lights me up? Why did I enter this field? And at this chapter of my life, like, what do I most want? It was when my language changed from shoulds to desire that all of a sudden this whole world opened to me. And I was like, that's it. I want to work with women. I want to coach them. I want to get away from the moderate to severe depression. And I want to start coaching women on how to thrive, And I felt that way personally in my own life because I was checking boxes. I was getting through till bedtime. Then I'm up at night feeding twins, nursing twins. It was so bonkers. I remember when I'd have like that breast friend. Did you have the breast friend, Ellie?
No, what's the
breast friend is this pillow that you wrap around your body and your baby gets to rest on it to nurse.
I got it. Yeah. I did have one of those.
It's like 9 years ago now. So I had a double breast friend. So the twins would be on this pillow nursing. And I swear, in the middle of the night, one would like roll off. I'd have to come pull her back on. The other one would roll off. I'm like, that's it, girls. You have like one chance left and then that's it. We're going to bed. And this was rinse and repeat for days. And I just thought, I'm surviving. There's more than this. There's more that I can feel in this life than just the checking of the boxes. Now, granted, that was a season of life that's how we all feel. That is not something that needs to change. But what we don't want is that season to turn into the rest of our motherhood and the rest of our womanhood. So I started to feel like we're going to make a change. It's going to be about thriving. And I dove into positive psychology, the science of happiness. I was already an expert in cognitive behavioral work, and I launched a coaching practice. And I did this kind of like I do most things. It just inspired action on a whim. I was like, let's go. We're going to do this. And I kind of mentioned it to some people, and they're like, you're going to be a happiness coach? Like, what? Yeah. What? You're a clinical psychologist. Your practice is overflowing, and you're going to close doors and go be a happiness coach. Like, are you sure? And I said, no, I'm not sure, but we're never sure before we create the evidence that really proves that it's possible. But all I knew is I wanted it, and the desire led me into this next chapter. So now that's what I do. Like, I coach women globally on designing their best lives using the signs of happiness. We create your roadmap. It's from a place of desire, not from a place of should and obligation and this prescribed path that we are all conditioned to go down until we wake up one day feeling like it didn't work. I'm not happy. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. You've just taken the wrong path forward. That's it. So that's me in a nutshell.
Where did you get the courage? Because that attitude that you just shared, where people were like, Wendy, what are you doing? Like, you had this thing that was working. Now you want to make this pretty intense shift. And by the way, like around this time, it wasn't as prominent as it is now. So even more people were probably like, wait, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're speaking another language. And you're not saying, no, this is going to work. You're saying, I don't know if it's going to work, but how am I ever going to know that it's possible unless I give it a shot? That takes some real courage. It's not courage when you already know it's going to work for whatever reason, right? It's courage when you're not sure, but you're willing to give it a shot anyway. Where did that come from?
That's such a good question. I think I've always told myself that as long as I believe I could figure it out, that I didn't have to live in fear. And honestly, I think it came from a major personal shift for me from my childhood into my early adulthood, where I survived a lot of childhood years from that place of just get through it, just survive it, just like try to get to the other side of it. But I always told myself, if I could just keep figuring this out, if I could just believe that I could figure something out and I had the tools within me to figure it out, whether it flopped or succeeded, but I could go forward, that helped me move through some really hard times. And then once I got into the other side of it as a young adult and realized like how much of my life, like I didn't yet get to experience and didn't yet get to have fun and be myself and build confidence. But I told myself, if I could figure that out, I can figure this out. So it was a belief that I think stemmed from a pretty young age, from just a survivalist place. And then it just became kind of a mantra, which was I did detach a lot from the outcome because I just really attached to the try, to the let's see, because I never wanted to wake up one day and just be like, I'll never know what happened because I didn't go for it. That kind of stuff haunts me. I just want to go for it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We do something else. but it didn't feel so scary. It felt more like curious. Like, could this be a thing? Could this be real? Could I literally be a successful happiness coach? Do people really want that? And they do. It turns out.
Turns out people want to be happy. Shocker. Okay, so besides the obvious part of the title, positive psychologist versus just your standard psychologist, how would you define the difference between the two? Like if somebody's like, okay, I know that I need support in my life. I'm looking to go see and speak with somebody. What's the difference between the two, and which route should one person take? Which route should somebody else take based on like what's best for each
That's
person?
a great question. There are so many different types of psychologists. We have clinical psychologists, developmental psychologists. We have psychologists who are professors and don't do any clinical work at all. So positive psychologist really just means that I'm a psychologist with a degree in psychology, with my doctorate in psychology, that specializes in this particular aspect of psychology, this particular science. For somebody who says, I want to change my life and I want to feel better and happier, and I want to have an experience where I utilize strategies and tools to thrive and to flourish and to roadmap, this is the positive psychologist coaching side of the world. For the person who is saying, I really want to feel better in my life, and I know that I have some pretty big steps forward coming out from underneath trauma, depression, severe anxiety, addictions, things like that, clinical work is probably a better fit. Right? So that's the major distinction that I would say. There's so many different types of psychologists. I am a coach who's also a psychologist. And having that degree is really so helpful for just the information, wisdom, strategies that I know, but it's not the clinical work. So it's more collaborative, solution-focused, goal-oriented. You're not going to come and sit on my virtual couch and tell me about all the trauma of childhood, right? We're not going to be overcoming those types of patterns in this type of work.
Okay, so I have a question for you. So let's say, because it sounds like I understand the difference, but like you're focused on the person who wants to thrive. Like that's the word that stands out for me. And then on the other side, it's like, okay, maybe healing, processing, healing, coming out the other side. But what if, for example, I know that there's things that I could for sure continue to process and heal and or at least start the process of it. But the thing that is unattractive to me about maybe the traditional sense of therapy is this like prolonging of a conversation that I don't want to have in the first place, right? The like drawing it out and, you know, we don't even know when it's going to end. There's not even like an end plan for it, you know, in some cases. I'm the type of person, I just want to thrive. I know I have these things that I need to process. Everybody has their own stuff, but I want to skip to the good part. That stupid song, you know, like I want to just like, okay, can we do this quickly and move on? Cause I'm with you. Like, I want to move on with my life. I want to live. I don't want to be in the past, but I'm also not ignorant or so ignorant to think that the past isn't affecting me in different ways, especially as a mom and limiting beliefs. So what would you say about somebody who resonates with that type of scenario?
It feels like exactly how I think about my life too. And I think a lot of women are in this position where we're not interested in going back 100 years and then living there for another 6 to 12 to 18 months to rewrite our associations with old wounds. We want to thrive now. Life is short. We are busy. We are building families and businesses, careers. We want to have fun. We want to just shed the nonsense and the noise and the BS in our heads. So my answer always is there's a therapy and a therapist and a coach and a psychologist for everyone. So I am a big advocate for saying, try different things, try different modalities. There is trauma work that is going to be an accelerated type of trauma work versus a very prolonged, drawn out type of trauma work.
Like what? What would be some examples?
I don't know. If we think about like EMDR, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something like that we can kind of get into, and that could be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Tapping for trauma can be helpful. So these are things that we can do in the now. Go into a session, get some relief or get some awareness, get some insight and build some changes there. It doesn't all have to be the very traditional kind of Freudian sense of what we think of as psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. So for the woman who is in your shoes, that's like, there's stuff to heal still. Even working with a coach who's trauma informed, they could very likely have an approach that's way more collaborative, future oriented, really shedding the old stuff quickly and not focusing on that traditional sense. That would be a place to start. But in my experience, so much of a lot of what we would call trauma and where it lives in our body comes down to our nervous system work. And we get to do nervous system work in the comfort of our own home every day in as short as 5 minutes to help ground ourselves and soothe our nervous system. So it's not like we have to have this huge upheaval in our lives of I'm going into the trenches to do my trauma work. I'll be back in 6 months. We can do these little things now that can really start to shift how we respond to triggers from our past. And that to me personally has been so powerful. I haven't had to go away to kind of like the trauma camp experience. I've been able to say, oh my gosh, I got so triggered by that thing. That was such an old wound. I didn't even know it existed anymore. Okay, my nervous system is reactive without even my conscious awareness. It's time to get back to grounding my body and soothing my body and reminding myself that I'm safe. So much comes back to that safety piece. So thriving is definitely the word that comes to mind when I think about the women I work with. But that doesn't mean we're thriving from a place of already feeling whole. We have a lot of work to do, and we have a lot of cleaning up to do along the way. All of those little detours are a really big part of the process, but it doesn't mean that it has to be this never-ending journey.
Yeah. Okay. So for somebody that feels like, maybe they're not sitting down with somebody right now and booking therapy sessions and having these conversations, but they notice their triggers. They can tell when their nervous system is acting up and they, something from their past has made them react in a certain way. What would be, because I love this thought of, okay, yes, going to speak to somebody and booking sessions with Dr. Wendy or whomever is always an option and a great option. And there are also ways that you can soothe yourself and get yourself out of this fight or flight situation that's happening in real time. So let's say I'm having a moment where, and if it would be helpful, we can create like a whole scenario, but let's say like I'm having a moment where I'm triggered and I feel that feeling in my body, like I'm panicking or like I'm frustrated. Like for me, it comes out as frustration and it comes out as anger. So let's say I'm having that moment. What would be your advice to me to ground myself and to, I don't know if the word is disassociate myself from like old stories or just like remind myself, whatever, like what would be your advice to get myself back to that grounded, safe place?
So it's a great question. When we find ourselves feeling really panicky or very activated on that emotional ladder, let's imagine our emotions are a ladder and there's all these different rungs. Let's imagine there's 10 rungs. When we're panicked, we're on like rung 10 and we're so active in the emotional mind that we can't access logic. We can't access reason. This is how we are designed. This is very normal. It's how our brain is wired to protect us, to have fight or flight so that we can flee when we need to or freeze when we need to. This is normal. But what a lot of people do and get frustrated with is that they can't get themselves off that rung of the ladder by doing this mindset work of just disconnect from the story and create a new story. Tell yourself you're safe and you're fine. And it's not working. And so we'll be like, I'm still in this place. I'm still so triggered. The idea is that first and foremost, to create space between stimulus and response. We have a trigger and we have a reaction to that trigger. So if I could just create space, and the space I'm talking about is like taking a breath. For the woman out there that has the awareness, like you just named, to be like, I was just triggered. I just feel that rage inside of me or that anger. I want to lash out or I want to shut it down or I want to run away or whatever it is. That awareness is so powerful to just give yourself that permission to create space between stimulus and response and take a breath. And as much as you will hear breath work be talked about all over the place as being a super powerful tool, it's because it actually is. When we can try to slow down our breath, our nervous system goes, oh, we're not in trouble. We're not threatened. There's no reason to run or flee or freeze because the heart rate is slowing down and now we're breathing slowly and it's deliberate. So if we can create a couple of breath cycles of deliberate, slower breathing, that honestly will give you enough time to unhook from your reactive nature. So we think about when it comes to triggers, we really want to start responding and not being so reactive. And to switch those train tracks from being reactive to responding is about creating that space between the stimulus and response and using our breath to just come down a couple rungs of the ladder so that we don't feel as threatened. Our brain's not perceiving our environment to be so threatening can sometimes be all that we need to catch ourselves. And just like, I was just about to go off on you. And I'm so glad I caught myself before I did that and caused an epic fight with my husband because honestly, I realized it's my anxiety. I just got so anxious. I just got so scared. If we can name what we're feeling, that also creates a buffer space. Now there's even more room that we get to respond versus react just by naming our feelings. Whoa, what is that? I feel it in my chest. I feel it in my shoulders, my stomach, my face. Where am I feeling this emotion? What is this emotion? And where is it coming from? If you can get that far, you've made it so far down that ladder that you can make many more choices that are going to help ground you further.
That's huge. I love that. And something that I'm not perfect at this, but you just reminded me of something that I try and be better at, especially with arguments with Chris, because I have, I can be totally reactive. I mean, everybody has moments of like that, but me especially, I definitely am somebody to blow up and say things that I don't mean out of moments of rage or anger or whatever. And obviously like pausing if that's possible. But what you said about naming the feeling, communicating to him like, hey, I'm feeling like I'm about to freaking explode right now because XYZ before I actually do it. When I've noticed that I'm able to articulate to him and, I'm sure other people would react in a similar way, depending on the situation. It's like, okay, let's talk about it then. Versus when you don't do that and you react, now we have a conflict. Right. Now you just said something. Now there's defensiveness. Now there's
and that happens in some so cases. Fast, as you know. All of a sudden that match is lit and boom, full fire. Boom. So it's not even Ali, like you need to be able to express articulately this whole sequence that I'm discussing. It's almost like you can just be like, I'm so angry right now. I need a second. So don't even try to talk it through because you still haven't come down to a place that you can access your rational mind. So you're going to fumble and you're going to get quickly heated again and shoot right back up that ladder. If you notice you're at that 9, I usually tell my clients, like you're at the 8, 9, 10 level, it's time to just take a space from whatever is heating you up so that you can cool down. And then we always have an opportunity to come back and express what was going on and what happened before we do the things that we regret or wish we hadn't.
Or we wish we hadn't. Yes, exactly. Okay, I have a question for you. This is kind of a personal question for me, but I think some people would get benefit from this because I think a lot of people deal with this. Something that I've realized about myself is I have these people-pleasing tendencies. And it just depends on the people that this comes out. But there's situations like with some family, sometimes clients, situations like that where like I find myself saying things and doing things and reacting in certain ways that don't necessarily benefit me, but it's because I'm trying to please these people. Now, something I've realized, because I had a conversation about this not long ago. I was like, what? This is so strange. Like, I'm overextending myself. Why? Why am I doing this? And I started thinking back, like, where these things come from. And I realized two situations in my life. One, I was very badly bullied as a kid. And I realized that like in that moment, if I could just like be quiet and fawn and like make them like me, like bend, move in ways that people liked me and, you know, didn't think I was like a weirdo or whatever, then they would leave me alone and I wouldn't be scared anymore. And then two, my stepdad, like, you know, was super abusive in some ways. And I would fawn then too. I learned to like fawn and, you know, just like bring the situation down by being nice, by doing whatever I needed to do. So now as an adult, it's like, okay, I still have these tendencies. So what would be your, if there was any kind of advice that you could give or a strategy or whatever to end this cycle once and for all, or these tendencies? I don't even know if that's possible, but I would love your thoughts.
This is a juicy question. I love this question.
And if it's too juicy or too complicated, I totally get that. Okay, cool.
You know, sometimes like each of the questions you've asked so far, I'm like, this could be a whole podcast episode on its own because we can go into so many layers, but let me try to encapsulate where my head's going. So first of all, I like completely relate. And I got chills when you said that because I too went through bullying and it just haunts you for a very long time. And it haunts you in ways that you would never expect. And here it is, like you were so strategically able to figure out what worked to survive and to stay out of harm's way or danger, that it was this response was going to be one that your brain was like, that works. Keep it handy. We're going to need it. So now as an adult, your brain's not like, oh, Allie, you're safe now. You're an adult. They have no power over you. You're good. Like, stop the pattern. You get to actually, because now that you have the awareness and the insight into the link between these things, which is awesome. Now you get to say, oh, this is an opportunity for me to actually deliberately train my brain to respond differently to these people. Now, whoever these people are, what I would start you with doing is writing down who they are individually. And then the next thing I would journal about is, why am I acting as if they have power over me now? So is there something that still exists in the dynamic that's pulling this from you, that's creating this like old, really helpful tool that you used to use as a kid, and you're applying it here because it still feels necessary because something's actually happening? Or is this an old pattern that you're mapping on because it's existed for so long and this is just how I do with this person? So that's
it.
It's the second one. It's just an old pattern that this is just what I do with this person. So then you get to do the workaround. And I would start with writing. If I'm going to, how do I want to be with this person? Number one, if I can imagine in my mind, I'm going to hang out with this person or go to dinner or see them at a family function or whatever the situation is. How do I want to be that way? What way do I want to be with them? Who is the woman I want to be in their presence, which is the same woman that I am in this person's presence, that has I do not act this way with this person at all. Who am I then? And who do I want to be with them? So it's this opportunity for me to kind of clean up a little bit of the, we'll call it mess for lack of a better word, but it's almost like we want the house to feel tidy in every room of the house. You've uncovered that there's still a couple rooms of the house that don't feel to your liking or as tidy as you would want. So this is a chance for you to go into the room that's tidy and be like, why is this room so tidy and stay tidy and I feel so good in this room? What is it about me here that I can actually use as a strength to map onto this room over here that I have not done the work in? I have not cleaned it up. I haven't purged. I haven't reorganized. I haven't made it to my liking or my tidiness yet. That's where I'd start. It's like, Allie, we are a house. We want all of the rooms in our house to feel good, to feel tidy, to feel clean and to our liking and to reflect the woman that we want to be. And there's some rooms that have not yet been cleaned out or organized the way we'd like. How can I map that on from a room that's already good? So take the person in your mind that you're like, that's the person I really am myself. And there's no power differential. And there's no need to appease. And there's no people pleasing. And there's no drama in my head. I have that in me. That exists in me. I already am that. How do I now apply that to this person and the next time I'm going to see them or speak to them?
The house analogy is brilliant because that's what it feels like. It's like I can tell, and that's what I don't like about it. You know, I'm one way with my family and with my husband, and I love that version of me. That's who I am to my core. I want to be that in all the rooms. So because the way that when you think about the house analogy, that's exactly what it is. It's like there's some rooms very close to you that just, you're not in integrity. And that's why it doesn't feel good for me, because I want to be the same in my kitchen, online in some cases, at my mother-in-law's, at my best friend's, it's not going to be perfect, of course. There's some things that are meant to be kept for best friends and not, but yeah, it's so good. Because when you look at these things and you can see, okay, where is this coming? Okay, I see where this is coming from. And why am I doing this now? This doesn't make sense and it doesn't feel good. And oftentimes when you can look at it from that new, fresh perspective as an evolved adult, then now you can start to make that change, which is, at 35, I'm just learning these things, which is wild.
Oh, it's never too late. You are not too old for this. You are young. There are clients I've had in their 50s, 60s, 70s who have still just started to scratch the surface on building awareness and insights in their life. So it's just like, be grateful that you know what you know when you know it, and there's always room for more. And when you said like, it's because it's out of integrity, what happens is a lot of times there's this sense that there's a conflict with my identity. Like I've claimed my identity as an adult and who I am as a woman, but why isn't that consistent across the board? How am I suddenly able to walk into a space and feel like a kid again, or feel intimidated, or feel powerless? But I've claimed my identity and I live into it in so many parts of my life or my house. So oftentimes when we find that I'm almost a different version of myself with particular people, it's because I have not claimed that identity in this space. It's like I haven't really claimed the space and left my mark in this area. I have not decided it is so over here. I've only let myself decide it is so over here.
So interesting.
So interesting.
Deciding it is so. How powerful is that? And to love yourself enough to say, I don't have to bend myself to make this other person comfortable. Like who I am, if they're not comfortable with who I am, that's a them problem, not a me problem.
That's right.
And
you are so safe with or without their approval. You are safe.
Yes. Yeah. And if they have an issue with that, then that's the issue at hand that needs to be looked at, not that's you, right. Feeling that you need to mold yourself or fold yourself into a pretzel to appease somebody else.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you're saying that, because I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions women have, is that I'm just supposed to follow the path that I was told to follow to fit in the box, to have success or to have happiness or to get the relationship or to have the house or to get the career. And then we find ourselves in these teeny tiny little boxes. We're miserable. We've cut off every unique quality that we have just to be liked and to get ahead, yet we still feel behind and unfulfilled. It's total backwards nonsense. So when you can share with your audience, with your listeners of you do not need to fold yourself into a pretzel to be liked and appreciated and accepted, it is 1000% true, because you can fold yourself into 16 pretzels and you still won't be liked and accepted by 100% of the people. It's a waste of time.
Exactly. Even then, they can still judge you. They can still not like you. And they're not even liking a real version of you. And I think too of think how much energy this takes. And that's what was frustrating me, because it was taking so much energy to remember, okay, when I go online, I need to not say these specific things. And when I go into this room, I need to, be a little bit more of this and not so much of this because they think this and whatever. And I think if we bring it to business owners and women who are growing businesses online, like you and I are, we do this online. And instead of letting our message be the message and letting our true uniqueness and pure magic come out, because it's so who we are and unique to everybody else, we're so concerned of like, who's going to watch this story? Who's going to send this to so-and-so? You know, we revert back to, I guess, those old girl, little girl ways of like, are people going to like this? Are people going to like me? So now we're wasting all this freaking energy on that thought versus what is the thing that I can say right now that's going to change the world, that's going to change somebody's days, the way somebody can feel about
That's
something.
right. It's such a distraction. And I find that so much of the time we let ourselves be so distracted and we don't know any better. We're not trying to be distracted. We're not trying to waste our energy. But there is, especially for women, but there just is this desire to be accepted and liked. And we don't want to make waves, and we don't want to be rejected, and we don't want to be ostracized, bullied, or criticized. So it's not like it's this like silly thing that we're trying to avoid. It's depression and suicide and mental health that we're trying to avoid. It's really survival-based thoughts that we have around, oh my gosh, like what would happen if I'm no longer accepted or liked or included? That can be really terrifying, and it has real impact on women. But if we can learn to build resilience and to spend more of our energy and put more eggs in that basket of building resilience over being liked, then we don't care as much anymore because we know we can figure it out. But we know like our inner worth is not dependent on external validation anymore. But it's not really until we start to build that self-worth from within and that resilience and confidence that we're going to be able to like believe what I just said.
Because the irony is the thing that we're trying to avoid, depression, suicide, all of these things that nobody wants to experience. The irony is because we're trying to avoid that, we're bending ourselves into this pretzel. And then we look around and we realize maybe some people do like us or love us in some cases, but they don't love us. They love the mask. And then that turns into, it can lead to a depressive season, because it's like, shit, I spent all of this time. I built this whole business. I built this whole relationship, this whole circle of friends with a bunch of people. I got the prize. And they don't even know who I am. That is scary too. Great. So it's like, realizing, okay, there's a way to go about this where like we can avoid the things that you don't want, but doing it in a way that puts yourself and your heart at
That's
the
right.
center.
Absolutely. And the sooner the better.
Yeah, the sooner the better. Okay. So I have some questions from the audience. Do you have time to answer some?
Let's go for it.
Okay, cool. Because I got some really, really good ones and I'm excited to dive in. Okay. So the first question that I got, and I'm going to keep these anonymous. The first one is, I've never heard of a positive psychologist who's a good fit for one. So we kind of already touched on that, but is there anything else that you would like to add?
I mean, really what comes to mind is anybody who wants to feel happier in their life can benefit from positive psychology. That's it. If you want to feel happier, if you want to thrive, if you want life to feel like you're flourishing more and suffering less, look into positive psychology and hiring a coach that specializes in that.
Beautiful. Next question. And I thought this one was so funny. What is a client horror story? I love these.
I love that.
I promise I did not submit this one myself.
I love that whoever submitted this not only asked, but was like, this is my guilty pleasure.
Give us the tea.
I really wish I had a juicy answer. I have not had a horror story with a client. I just, there's been clients that maybe aren't the best fit or don't follow through as much as they think they would, or like there's things like that get a little bit of hiccups or, speed bumps along the way. But horror sounds so fun that now I want to start finding people's horror stories and figure out what are they? Do you have one?
I have one. It's not mine. This is somebody else's.
Share.
So somebody that I know who's very close to me is a psychologist, and this happened to one of her colleagues, like a good friend of hers. She took on a client who up front, looked great on paper, all the things. And this is like a traditional sense. You have the client come in and sit on the couch, that kind of therapy. So she takes on, and one thing that she noticed, and, she said like a red flag of this situation was right out the gate, this client started pushing her boundaries. So she like would try and go over on time, like the session was strict 60 minutes and that was very clear, but she would like always try to push it over a little bit and be like, oh, if you just have time for one more question, like all the time. And then she would start calling or messaging after hours and started like that. And then she sent a Facebook request to this psychologist, and the psychologist denied it because no, this, and I made sure, I was like, is this the full story? And again, this person who told me this is very close to this person. She was like, this is the full story, because the friend request is denied and this therapist was being a little bit more strict with her client. The client lost her ever loving mind. And it just started this string of situations. But like one of the things that she did was she called DHS on her psychologist, like saying that her kids were in danger. And DHS came to the house and they have to like go into the home and actually have to like see the situation and make sure that it's okay. Like she did stuff like that. I can't remember. It ended up to where like they had to go to court. She had to take a restraining order against her client. It just turned into this rapid situation. It went downhill so fast because clearly she had severe mental health issues, which is why she was there, but something just snapped. I don't know. But I remember hearing, and there's some things that I'm forgetting. I know because I remember like my ground was on the floor. I couldn't believe it. And now this poor psychologist who has had like this squeaky clean record, she's dealing with all of this and, like bad reviews on her website and these fake things, so
terrifying. It's what we're all scared of.
Terrifying.
Like when you become a psychologist, you really do feel like you're taking such a risk and you're really holding on to faith that if you're trying to put good into the world, you're going to get the good back. And you really hope that never comes to fruition, these horror stories, especially when it relates to your family. That's just another level. And to have your children involved and security services involved, it's awful. It's awful. So
scary.
I feel very grateful. Thank you, universe. There's no horror stories to be recounting today. I'm very grateful for that, but that is a wild one.
Yeah. Not to scare everybody, but I probably just freaked everybody out, but it's fine. Okay, moving on. All right, next question. Best way to encourage family or friends to adopt or try a better mindset? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering
Who
this.
isn't? Don't we all have that person or persons in our life that we're like, if they could only see the light, if they could only think about things differently or let go of this or forgive or whatever it is, we have those people that we care so much about that we really want them to feel and do and be better versions of themselves. We love them. It's with good intentions. But oftentimes those good intentions create a lot of friction in relationships. Most of us don't want to be told we need to change. Most of us universally aren't like, hey, I was hoping when we had coffee today, you're going to let me know what's wrong with me and how you'd like me to be better. That's not what we imagine.
Hey, you suck. You should start living life different. Okay, thanks for sharing.
Here are the top 3 things I think you could be different. How you could be different in my life. So we don't want to hear that stuff, which is normal. And so the advice that I would give here is to model it. Like you're going to want me to say something like, here's the key, and you're just going to slip in the side door and they won't even know you did it. And poof, they're like,
say these magic words.
And they're so on board 100%. The reality is the best thing we can do for influencing those around us in a positive or negative way, but let's call it positive, is to model it, is to be it, is to talk about it, is to express it, is to embody it. Because we don't realize how much we do rub off on people, especially those we spend time with. And so not only will we rub off on people, like they'll notice, oh, interesting, like she's talking differently or thinking differently, or I didn't consider that, or that's not how my brain works. Why is she reacting this way when I would have this reaction? We actually influence people just by being around them and showing them who we are. But we also inspire them. There's a lot of times that we don't realize that by just us focusing on really showing the way that we would love for them to think or engage with the world, that inspires them. A lot of people don't realize change is even possible. They think, this is my lot in life. This is who I am. I am anxious. I am rigid. I am resentful. I am, and don't realize that they're actively choosing to perpetuate old patterns that have existed for a long time, and they're acting like victims of their life. But when we can show that there's a different side and that it works and we're happier or healthier or wealthier or whatever it is, that can really inspire other people to make change, because it makes it less risky for them if they've seen that you can do it.
So good. It's so
right?
True.
It's so true.
And a lot of people are thinking too, like, yeah, but they bring me down, or, what they do affects me in a negative way, and realizing, okay, let's shift that. Right now you're choosing to be influenced by their energy and their decisions, or you can be the influencer, right? Can you hold and do your own thing independent of what anybody else does, and realizing like you have your own power here. Do you want to utilize it? That was something that changed a lot.
That's such a good point. Like, we also forget that oftentimes one of the reasons we want others to change is so that we're more comfortable, right? And then aren't we talking about the flip side of that we're not going to be women that just appease others so they're more comfortable? Why should others be changing to appease us? There's that opportunity we have to be like, wait a second, like the hypocrisy of that, let's actually like live it, embody it, be it from both sides. And if we need to, because someone's really, crappy or whatever, set a boundary, protect your energy, take space, rise above, take distance, say no, say goodbye. You have that power too.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. Next question. What do you think about all of the new focus on psychedelics for mental health treatments?
I don't have a huge opinion on this. I think that it sounds interesting. When I first heard about it, I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's a little bit young for me personally to have a kind of fully thought through opinion on it. But I will say this, if it doesn't cause harm, and many people are saying it has some benefit in their lives, let's see what comes of it. Like, I thought, you know what? I don't know much about it. Maybe I try it. Maybe I find somebody and they're certifying now a lot of psychologists and therapists in this work, so that people who are curious about doing this are actually prepared and trained and ready to do this in a safe way with their patients and clients. So I've had
like microdosing.
Yeah. So I've thought that of like, maybe we try it. Maybe we see what it's all about. I don't know, but I've heard some good things. So it sounds kind of cool to me.
I agree. Different strokes, different folks. I wholeheartedly agree. Everybody's different. They're going to want different things and require different things. And I think, do you?
Yeah. And honestly,
love that
people
answer.
Get excited about something new. Like, it's sexy. Yeah. It's different. It sounds interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, whoa, we don't know that. I haven't done that 10,000 times with no avail. Right? I haven't done like traditional therapy is recommended. Okay. Like, give me something new to hold on to. Give me some sense of hope that there's something else that might get me unstuck or might help me accelerate my growth or progress. Like, and this is the new shiny thing. And if it's effective and that's what the research shows, by all means, this sounds cool. But also be mindful of like, there's a lot of excitement and hype around something because it's new and it's different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And use your discretion. But I love that you're open to that's not something that you're necessarily trained in or have experience with just yet, but you're being curious about it. You're like, I think that sounds really cool. I'm going to look more into it. And who knows, maybe you'll be a facilitator of some of these things. And I love that growth mindset in your own business.
I mean, maybe in the way my brain initially thinks about it, like maybe I would be the recipient. Like maybe I'm the patient to experience what this is like, because how interesting if this modality of doing the work creates such a different outcome. Like, that's interesting. Okay, let's try it.
I think so too. Yeah. YOLO. Okay. Next question. What is your take on toxic positivity?
My take on toxic positivity. So this is funny because it came out, during COVID, right? This whole idea of just we're trying to force positivity and we're trying to be too positive. And here I am in the world as a positive psychologist. Like my whole thing is about happiness. And so I got a lot of that like questioning around like, oh, are you just one of them? Like, are you just one of the like group that just wants to shove positivity down our throats when we're going through this pandemic and life is really hard right now? And so my take on it is anything that pressures somebody to only express one side of their experience or one side of their emotions can be toxic. Like that's just the bottom line. So the idea that toxic positivity is really this pressure to only talk about the happiness and only express positivity and positive emotions seems ridiculous. That's not what this is about. And so people will get confused with me in particular, so I can speak to that side of it, which is positive psychology or being a positive psychology coach or a happiness coach is always about the whole of the person. We can't figure out where we want to go or how we want our lives to change if we're not aware of acknowledging and honoring the things that aren't working well or going right. So this idea that we're just going to kind of shove positive, just think positive, just be it's nonsense. It's not gonna, it fizzles out because it doesn't actually have any legs to walk on. This isn't actually where we see change or growth. So if anyone's ever in your life, and we do have these people in our lives, I think, that just keep saying like, think positive or feel positive and it's all fine. Everything's good. Be grateful. Gratitude got a little bit sticky here too. Everyone pressures us. Be grateful. Be more grateful. If you're just grateful, you'll be fine. No, it's not just any one thing and you'll be fine. Acknowledge and honor the whole of your existence and the range of your emotions and allow them all to exist because they are all the human experience. And don't let yourself fall into this trap of like, oh, now I can't share my truth because I should be more positive. That's not real. Be real. It's like 2023 now. Like, let's let ourselves be real and authentic and not worry about what people are going to think if we're not positive enough.
Yeah, we have emotions for a reason. We're meant to feel them. And if I've learned anything about my life, stuffing them down and not letting them come out is not good. So and I think anybody because I think it'd be so easy for somebody to see a title like yours, like a positive psychologist, and assume that that's your MO. But obviously what you're saying is that's not even close to the whole truth.
That's right.
So beautiful. Okay. Next question. You got time for a few more? Okay. Next question is, I have been insecure since a young age, and now that I am 45, I just want to love myself for once. How do I start? Oh,
I love this.
I want to hug this person.
I know, right? I love this. First of all, like, I do too. I wish we can like, who is this person? How do we give them a squeeze and just be like, how brave are you to even ask this question? Who wasn't insecure from a young age, right? Like most of us are just like, girl, you are speaking my language. And whether it's 45 or 35 or 25 or 85, we relate to this sentiment. So I just wanted to say first, like mad props to you for coming out and just throwing this out there, because as soon as we do that, like now things get to shift because you are owning it. You're owning it.
And everybody's like, me too on some level.
Me too. Right. Me too on some level. So when it comes to self-love, when it comes to anything, and this will touch on something we talked about earlier today, is the first step is always deciding it as so. Who do you want to be? What does self-love mean? Like, when you think about how do I start loving myself, or how do I heal insecurities, or how do I build confidence, or how do I feel worthy or whole? You decide it. You quite literally decide that this is enough. I've had 40 years of feeling insecure and feeling less than and having self-doubt and imposter syndrome and catching myself up in this loop of overthinking and ruminating and second guessing. You get to decide today, right now, in this very moment, that it's over. That book is actually closed and you're writing a new book, and it starts today, and today's page 1, and it starts with, I am a woman who. Like that's how we start. So if the desire is for self-love, we have to first want it, and then we have to claim it. We have to say that that's what we really want. A lot of times women, I think, get trapped in thinking that they want to do something, but they just want to do it because someone else is. Oh, self-love is all the rage now, or gratitude's all the rage. But really, if we just step into at the day's end, like, how do I want to feel about who I am?
Yeah.
How do I want to feel about who I am? That's it. Like, then we get to make some positive steps forward. Because if you wake up tomorrow and you declare, like, I am the woman who loves herself and feels whole and worthy, your choices tomorrow and your thoughts tomorrow and your relationships tomorrow are all going to shift because you have put that stake in the ground that says, this is over, this is happening, this is new, this is my birth, or this is my start, or whatever you want to call it. And now there's this really beautiful domino effect that occurs as a result of that first domino falling. But you have to claim that one first.
You have to be the one to do it. A lot of people look for that outside validation of like, tell me I'm lovable. Tell me I'm worthy of being confident. Tell me I'm beautiful or whatever. But oftentimes the reason why people think that about somebody else is because they're showing up in that way, whether it's true or not within them, they're showing up in a way which makes somebody else think that thing. And I couldn't agree more. And it sounds so simple. And I think this is why a lot of people discredit advice like this, where it's like, you decide first, but that is the truth. In my experience, this is the truth. Like, if you can't believe it about yourself, nobody else will. And you have to practice feeling that way. So if you've spent 45 years of your life not feeling love for yourself, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and the day after and the day after and immediately remember this new chapter that you've opened. This is why I'm such a big fan of like rituals or embodiment practices or, whatever that looks like. It's going to look different for everybody, where you get to snap back, yourself back into, okay, what chapter am I in today? And setting that intention, because that's going to set the tone for how you move throughout the rest of the day, the things that you do, the boundaries that you set, the people that you speak to, the way that you allow people to speak to you, and so on and so forth.
Exactly. I know, like, when you think about just declaring something or claiming something or deciding something, to some of us, it sounds so vague, like so abstract. Okay, but then what? But then what are those nuanced little details, those little tiny like micro tweaks we make to the day and to how we talk to ourselves, how we think about ourselves, how we talk about ourselves to other people. Like you said, the boundaries that we set, what we allow in, what we allow out, how we protect our energy, what we tolerate, what we seek, all of that starts to shift. So the question's easily answered with this, like, well, step one is, and those rest of the steps are, this is when you reach out for support. This is when you get accountability, because you have been for 45 years really digging this trench of, I am this person with these insecurities. You've lived in this trench for a long time from this place. In order to dig a new trench, we need to get some shovels. And so that's where accountability comes in, and having somebody that can see the greater picture and being able to guide and mentor you along that way, because your brain is going to want to go right back to that trench because it's safe, familiar, and predictable. And your brain's like, I'm good. We don't need to be any different at 45. Don't need to teach this dog new tricks.
Yeah, too much energy. And I love that you bring back the point of like, there are people out here who are trained, Dr. Wendy, to help you go through this process and create these new pathways in your brain and these new habits in your life and hold you accountable and hold a mirror up to you. So
that's right.
Thank God. Thank goodness.
That's right.
Okay, we have a couple more. How do you overcome stage fright? This is something that really holds me back, and it is frustrating. This is a question, not for me anymore.
Oh, stage fright. I totally feel you on this, sister. I get it too. And so I realized at this stage in my career, I've loved living in my little cocoon and my safety net of my working with the women I work with in the groups and private coaching and doing my thing. But the idea of speaking, and Allie, you can speak to this because you're like a boss at the speaking. But if we think about like stage fright and getting over the fear of, like, the only way is to do it. The only way is to do it and to practice it. And so at this stage in my career, I realized, oh my goodness, Wendy, You could spend forever and never get on a stage. You don't have to. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You truly do not. But if there's any part of you that wants to overcome this thing that kind of has haunted you for a while, this is how you do it. You need to get in the arena and you need to do the actual work of experiencing something to overcome something like this. So for me personally, I signed up for Toastmasters. Just kill me. I'll be going next week to I don't know what. I feel like I'm going to the lion's den. I already have nerves about it. So I totally hear you on this. And really, the way we get past it when it comes to this stuff is exposure, is getting out there, is trying, is going for it, is doing it messy, is doing it scared, is doing it terrified. I would give talks and workshops, especially before COVID, and I would call Todd and I'd be like, I want to leave. I think I'm going to leave. They won't even know if I go out the back door. I'll text them. I'll apologize. I just need to get home. I can't do this. And I would always have this moment of I'm going to throw up. I can't. And your brain just goes wild. And our choice at that fork in the road is, do we listen and let the fear dictate our decision in that moment? Or do we honor that there's fear and choose what we really desire most instead of how we feel in that moment? And that starts to make all the difference and starts to splinter what our brain interprets as super scary and risky from something that is scary, not really as risky as our brain says, and totally overcomable.
Totally overcomable. What's the worst that can happen? You forget some lines, you bomb, and people are just looking at you. In the grand scheme, it's really not that big of a deal. To some people, that sounds like their worst absolute nightmare, and I understand that. I will say something that helped me. One, doing stories, social media online, because I was just scared of video in general, which kind of led to what I thought was also a stage fright. So stories, but then also doing trainings on Zoom in front of people, that really helped me. And then it wasn't that much of a difference. So that's my 2 cents there.
I love that.
Last question. I am sabotaging myself so much. It affects my day very badly. And then she put in parentheses, energy, motivation, etc. So she didn't obviously give much detail about what she's sabotaging or how she's sabotaging, but she can see that she's doing it, and she's saying it affects my next day so badly. So maybe this could, I don't know, let's say it's drinking or something. I don't know. Okay. She didn't give an example.
Okay. Sabotage. We all know this beast. We all live with this beast. This is so common. So first of all, you're so not alone in the sabotage. We all do it. This is especially what happens when our brains don't have a lot of evidence that it's possible for us to change in the ways that we desire. Okay. So for the most part, we will notice that sabotage is really prevalent in the beginning of behavior change. Because again, you heard me talk about this trench. We've dug this deep trench. We lived inside the trench. We live from this place of the trench. So the idea that we're suddenly going to switch like train tracks and smoothly become this person that just does the things is very unlikely. And we can't expect that that behavior change is going to be this smooth, linear process. So the first thing is to know, one, this happens to everyone. Two, it's very common in particular in the beginning of behavior change. So number one, is this change that you're talking about making change that you actually desire? This is such a key piece. Again, we tend to tell ourselves we should change these parts of who we are, but not because it comes from a place of being our best or because we truly desire it. It comes from a place of pressure from the external world. So we're going to sabotage a heck of a lot more if it's not intrinsically motivating for us to make this change, right? So noticing that is like, why am I wanting to, stop drinking this much on the week? Or why am I wanting to, what is that about for me? Is that a desire or is it a should? That's the first thing. The second thing is when it comes to sabotaging is just knowing that it's going to be part of the process as we work through the kinks. We're just like learning how to ride a new bike. There's gears. We fumble through it. We kind of hit some potholes. We're shaky. That this is normal part of the experience. But if we truly desire this change, showing up as consistently as we can with as much grace and forgiveness as we can along the way, we're a lot more likely to get back up on that bike and keep going. So if you are adding layers of shame, guilt, criticism, self-hatred, all of the nonsense that just makes us feel like crappy humans, you're going to sabotage a lot more because your brain's like, what's the point? What are you doing? You can't do it anyway. You're an a-hole for even trying. Stop bothering. Just do what you always do and move on. So we get into this conflict with ourselves over and over again until we get the hang of this new bike and we're like, oh, okay, I got it. This is my new normal. That takes a while. There's a really messy, sticky period that we don't like the discomfort of. So we go back to the sabotage.
That's huge for me because I used to be more of like a perfectionist and struggle with that. So whenever I would go make a change, if it wasn't perfect, like let's say taking supplements, I would do this. It's so annoying. Like if I forgot one day, then it would just throw me off. I'm like, well, I forgot a day. So, I think having that grace for yourself and realizing that this is part of the process, you cannot avoid it, is a game changer.
It really is a game changer. And just letting ourselves be lighter about change. Like, can we let ourselves be light about this? Can this process be fun, you guys? Like, can we let ourselves want to thrive and become better versions just because we desire it? Can that not be enough of a reason? Or do we have to be shamed and shunned and punished into changing ourselves? Like, enough.
Enough. For real, though, let's have some fun. Dr. Wendy, this conversation was killer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was so fun. I loved it.
I love this so much. I love your insight. And I mean, I'm walking away with tools and some things that have really helped shift some situations in my life. So selfishly, I'm very thankful for you. Where can people find you? Because I know people are going to want to check out your services.
Yeah.
So what's going on?
If you have questions or you want clarification on anything I shared or you're curious about what I do, I'm at Dr. Wendy O'Connor on Instagram. So you'll find that in the show notes and feel free to DM me. I'm always just a message away. I love saying hi and getting to know new people. So don't hesitate. And I'm also going to be dropping your listeners an exclusive discount code. So I'll share that with you after so you can add that to the show notes too. So if anyone is like, you know what, like the business, I'm working on my business and I want to work on my life. I really want to like kill the mindset. I want to really be able to flourish in this life. Like reach out, we'll chat.
Well, that's very generous of you. And I know everybody's going to be very excited. So thank you so much, Dr. Wendy. You are a boss. I'm very thankful for you. I'm just thankful to call you a friend. And I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Allie. I loved it.